Hello, ghosties. I'm Chance Lee,
And I'm Amanda McAvoy.
and this is That's So Gothic, a movie podcast about girls, guys, and haunted houses. I have a little poem to open today's show. It's inspired by a poem that I read from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark,
Oh,
those creepy ass books that
yeah.
give you nightmares from your kids. Nicole is dead, and her kids don't know it. Her kids are dead, and Nicole doesn't know it. They're both lying dead in the very same house, and neither one knows that the other one's dead.
Oh, how charming.
Yes, and in the Scary Stories book, it's got this ghastly illustration of these two dead men lying in bed next to each other. So
Ooh,
nightmare fuel.
I love
But
that.
today we're talking about something a little less grim. We're talking about The Others.
Sometimes the world of the dead gets mixed up with the world of the living.
As you can see, the housework has been rather neglected since the servants disappeared almost a week ago.
Do you mean they just vanished?
Into thin air.
How do you do, children? I'm your new nanny.
Are you going to leave us too?
Why should I leave you?
The others said they wouldn't, but they did, and then it happened. Why have you opened the curtains? It was Victor.
You told your brother that there was someone else in the room.
There was.
That'll do, Anne.
I've seen them too. Sooner or later, she'll see them. Then everything will be different.
What do you want?
They're everywhere. They say this house is theirs.
Children!
Come here!
Run!
Can't you hear it? There's someone
Where is my daughter?
there. Are you mad? I am your daughter.
Released in 2001, The Others was written, directed, and scored by Alejandro Amenabar. It stars Nicole Kidman as Grace, a Christian widow, Thyanula Flanagan as Mrs. Mills, the housekeeper slash nanny, and Alakina Mann and James Bentley as Anne and Nicholas, Grace's daughters. This is the story of a woman and her kids in a haunted house. And it was also executive produced by Tom Cruise and the Weinstein brothers.
Oh, fun.
Double
Yeah, right.
1-2 punch there.
Ew.
So
Were
back
they, I'm sorry to interrupt, but was Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise married at this point? They had to have been, right?
I would have said I think this is near the end.
Okay.
Like this is near the end of their marriage.
Okay.
They divorced that year, actually. That year
Oh.
they divorced.
Okay. I just wanted
Yeah.
context.
Hmm. So this was a huge box office hit. It made 210 million worldwide against a budget of 17 million.
Wow.
Ebert gave it 2.5 stars. He said it was slow and compared it negatively to The Sixth Sense.
Mm.
And it has an 84% critical tomato and a 77% audience tomato.
Okay.
What did you think about this movie? Had you seen this before?
Yes, I've definitely seen this before. I think I watched it like when I was first getting into horror movies. I feel like it's like comes up on a lot of lists about, horror movies to start with, what's the word, like critical, to watch horror movies. I mean, I think it's solid. It's, it's never going to be like my favorite movie. I mean, I think my opinion on it is kind of similar to the movie, where it's just kind of there a little bit. You know, it doesn't blow me out of the waters, but it's definitely not
Mhm.
bad. Very neutral towards it. What about you?
I agree. I thought I would like this more.
Hmm.
I've seen it twice before.
Yeah.
I saw it in the theaters in
Mm.
2001. I probably watched it again in like 10 years later
Mm.
and really appreciated how different it was on rewatch knowing the
Yeah.
ending.
Right.
And then watching it for the third time, I got nothing else out of it.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of like really iconic scenes. But I don't think, and I think it was, at the time, 2001, I imagine there weren't a lot of movies really like it.
Hmm.
Um, but now a movie with sort of this tone and, the story was very inventive for the time, even though it is a little Sixth Sense-y. Um, now I feel like you can throw a rock and hit a movie kind of similar to this.
Yeah, this movie was probably greenlit right after The Sixth Sense or
Mm,
around that time. I feel like The Sixth Sense was what, 98, 97,
yeah,
99,
it
something like
was it
that.
was late 90s, yeah.
Yeah, and then this has I feel like you have to have a twist around this
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
I never had any desire to ever go back and watch The Sixth Sense again
Mm,
though.
yeah.
So, because to me, I don't know, maybe if I rewatched it, I'd think differently, but what is it going to change about the
Right.
story
Yeah.
other than, ooh, let me figure out how they did it, you know?
Yeah.
And really, it's all you're figuring out in that point is how inattentive you are, because like it
Mm.
should be pretty obvious that like, or at least that something's up, the fact that,
Yes.
Bruce Willis and the kid are the only ones that talk to each other.
Yeah.
But with this one, it changed it for me thematically, at least on the first
Yeah.
rewatch, and it became less of a haunted house story and more of this really sad tragedy, just knowing
Yeah.
the Nicole Kidman character and her faith and all of that was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that this movie does a pretty good job of hiding it
Hmm.
because it honestly doesn't really leave you a lot of clues as to what's happening. It presents it as very straightforward, which
Hmm.
is a, interesting way, I guess. Yeah, it is very sad. And it's so funny because I always wonder now with movies like this and The Sixth Sense, there's almost no way to watch it like it was originally, planned to watch to be surprised,
Right.
because I think the twists in them are, maybe I'm just, you know, I just am in too deep to horror to ever, but it's like no one can ever be surprised again because it's so iconically, this twist. So,
Yeah, that's
mhm,
true.
yeah.
Well, this came out at I feel like the height of Nicole Kidman's powers early
Mm,
on. Like
yeah.
she was about to become really big and break free of Tom Cruise and skyrocket.
Yeah.
She had 3 movies come out in 2001.
Wow.
This one,
Uh-huh.
Moulin Rouge.
Oh, damn.
I remember seeing Moulin Rouge in May.
Uh-huh.
Came out in May that year. I probably saw Moulin Rouge 5 or 6 times that summer. My friends and I
Really?
saw it a lot.
Yeah.
And when the others came out with Nicole Kidman, I was there. I had
Yeah.
to see the others. And she's in a movie that is lost to time called Birthday Girl that premiered at a film festival in 2021 and officially theatrically released in February. But still within a calendar year, she had these 3
Wow.
movies. Birthday Girl, I really enjoyed. She's like a Russian mail order bride,
Hmm.
and it's kind of gangstery. Ben Chaplin was in it, who I always found really charming and
Hmm.
also lost to time, I feel like.
Yeah. Never heard that.
Um, and then the next year, she would be in The Hours and win an Oscar.
Oh, wow. Wow. So girl was working.
Yes. And I mean, I feel like Nicole Kidman is the greatest actress of all time. She is still working
Yeah.
today.
Yep.
She is barely, looking at her filmography, she's barely taken any time off. She seems to
Yeah.
do at least one or 2 projects a year.
Yep.
I am wearing my shirt that says somehow heartbreak feels good
Heartbreak.
in a place like this.
Yep.
It's got Nicole's face on it.
Oh, it's so good.
So her most iconic project.
Yes, my favorite bit to do every single time I go to the movies is when that comes on. As soon as it's over, turning to the person next to me and going, "Well, it's time to leave." It's my favorite bit. I do it every single time. People hate going to the movies
that's
with
good.
me.
I'm taking that.
Yeah, time to go.
Now that I've moved and I'm not as compelled to go to the movies because the closest theater is not an AMC.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't have an
right.
incentive to go.
Yeah. Oh no, Nicole.
I know. We got to get her into all the theater chains.
Yeah, seriously. She should do a different one for every single one.
She really should. My favorite thing about that, I mean, Nicole Kidman is a fantastic actress, but
Yeah.
I feel like because they show her watching these movies and her
Yeah.
face is just lighting up. And I feel like she really had probably never even seen or heard of Jurassic Park. I feel like Nicole Kidman lives on a different plane of existence. And I feel like she's just like, oh my God, they brought dinosaurs back. Like just looking at the screen, like, like
Wow. I love this documentary.
No, I love her. I just feel like, she
Yes.
exists in a different realm. From
She
all
really
of us.
does. Yeah.
Yeah. But it also has, well, it has really no one else. It has Fionnuala Flanagan, which is that's my terrible Irish voice, not even close. I know her from Lost.
Oh, okay.
She was in Lost, and
Yeah.
she's in the Elizabeth Montgomery Lizzie Borden movie.
Interesting.
She's the maid in that as well.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
She's good at playing a maid.
Good at playing a maid, yeah. And that
Yeah.
would have been like the 80s. So she's one of the OG maids. And then the kids, Alakina Mann and James Bentley, gone. They never did anything else.
Yeah, it took me like not that long. I'll give myself some credit. But when I first saw the little girl on screen, I was like, is that Drew Barrymore? And then I was like, no, this is early 2000s. She was already like grown at this point. She looks like Drew Barrymore.
She was giving me Kirsten Dunst Interview with the Vampire vibes, I think because of the hair.
Yeah, the hair, definitely. Yeah.
She's very good in this.
She is.
I really liked her performance a lot.
Yeah.
She appears to be an artist now. There's someone that looks kind of like her that has an Instagram page with her art. And then the boy, James Bentley, can't find anything about him. I found one photo that was presumably him from like his 20s. I was really glad that his brow wasn't permanently furrowed because I feel like the only direction he gets is to furrow his brow.
Furrow, yeah. Just be
if you do a drinking game and drink every time they show this kid with his eyebrows like furrowed, and you'll be lit in like 15 minutes.
Yes. Yeah.
There's literally maybe one scene where he's not clenching his forehead.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't hear little British kids' voices without just thinking of Peppa Pig. They sound so much like Peppa Pig to me.
Peppa should parody the others.
Oh my God. She really should. Yeah. Oh,
that'd be great.
Little Peppa Pig.
So also the director, even though this was a huge movie, critical success, commercial success, he's from Spain, and it was a huge success in Spain. He won 8 Goya Awards, which is the Spanish Oscars. And he had previously done Abre los Ojos, which was remade as Vanilla Sky.
Oh.
So I'm assuming that's how he met Tom Cruise, perhaps.
Interesting.
Or maybe they did. I don't remember when Vanilla Sky might have been after this, actually. Maybe this hit it. Oh, no. Vanilla Sky, also 2001. This guy was like.
Wow. He's booked.
He was everywhere.
Yeah.
And then he did a movie called The Seat Inside with Javier Bardem. And then he's done 4 movies since that I've never heard of.
Interesting.
Huh. But I did learn that. So from looking at the Goya Awards Wikipedia page, that year they gave an honorary Goya Award to Juan Antonio Bardem Muñoz, who is Javier Bardem's uncle, famous Spanish movie director. I didn't know Javier Bardem was Spanish nepotism.
I know. Didn't know
El
he was a Nepo
nepotism.
baby.
Yeah. So El Nepo Nino. So, so found that out. But
Yeah.
yeah. And then he also did the score, which it didn't really
Yeah.
stand out to me.
Yeah, it's, I would say, pretty like typical of this type of movie.
Mm-hmm. And he does make a point in one of the special features talking about how much scarier he thinks things are without computer effects. And that is something I like about this movie, is that there is no
Yes.
CG.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
like lightly used. They do show, there's a special feature where they show, it's very boring, and they show how they just added fog to all of
that's
the outdoor
hilarious.
scenes.
Yeah.
And they'll show just like an actress and then, them standing in front of a blue screen. And the blue screen is just propped up like in the field, like they're shooting on these actual locations.
Yeah.
But they just have this screen that's like, I don't know, 6 feet by 6 feet. And then they use that to like put some fog in. I didn't really understand the process.
Funny. Yeah.
And the special features, like them just showing scene after scene of them without fog, with fog, without fog, with fog. There's no narration. There's no commentary, nothing. Very boring.
Wild.
Yeah. But let's get into the plot summary. It'll be a little bit more interesting. I do agree with Ebert that this is very slow, especially if you know where it's going. So we begin with Nicole Kidman as Grace. She's telling the biblical story of Genesis, which will, her faith will be an overarching theme of the movie. We're on the island of Jersey in the British, what is it? The Channel, whatever, one of the Channel Islands. And it's 1945. And then we wake up with her screaming. Ah!
Yeah.
And we'll understand why when we get to the end of the movie. But we will switch back and forth between her perspective and then the perspective of like the help. There's Bertha Mills, played by Fionnuala Flanagan, Edmund Tuttle, the gardener, and Lydia, a mute. So they show up saying they're the new help, and Nicole is like, great, the old help disappeared. You're hired.
They just vanished.
They just vanished. And she goes through these rules. It was making me think, how many horror movies have rules? Like The Boy or whatever.
I was just going to say, yeah.
There's a lot of The Boy in this, I feel
I was going to say, it has, even the little boy kid kind of looks like the boy doll.
He does.
Yeah.
So she tells them these rules, like they have to lock the doors behind them. They can't make a lot of noise. They don't have electricity. And it's all because her little pale children are deathly allergic to light.
Oh, I wish that was me.
Right. So they did have a special feature on the DVD, an interview with a real family where their child has this disease.
No. Am I about to feel really bad about my comment?
I mean, it's not fun. Yeah, but it's called, let me see what it was called. So the special features have an interview with a mom whose daughter has xeroderma pigmentosum, which is the real life version of this disease. It's an actual disease that's very rare, like fewer than 1,000 people have it.
Oh wow.
And they do describe this horrifying incident where they take their like 6-month-old daughter outside and she literally just starts to blister in front of them. So yeah, so they keep her inside. They do stuff very similar. They always lock the doors, close the curtains, they keep her out of the light. But in 1995, this family founded Camp Sundown, and it's a little camp for kids who have this disease to come and sleep during the day and then do like camp stuff at night. Like they play, flag football and capture the flag, and they can swim and do all sorts of stuff at night in these UV safe gatherings. And they founded that in 1995. And it seemed to still be going strong. The last update to the website was in 2018. So maybe there's some COVID difficulties, but hopefully they're still.
I hope they're doing good.
Yeah, it was that was nice. That was a nice little uplifting part of the special feature.
Oh.
We'll find out in this movie that it's little more than a red herring.
Mm-hmm.
But After breakfast, Grace discovers that the job ad that she put in the paper asking for help never actually sent.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to know how the help showed up. And they said, well, they just happened to show up
They did.
because they used to work there. So they just
Yeah.
showed up seeing if there was work.
Yep.
And Grace is
check.
like, yeah, Grace is like, all right, great. Excellent.
Super.
Satisfactory answer.
Yeah.
So she homeschools her children like many Christian folk do. And they spend a lot of time reading scripture and Bible stories and talking about them. And that's their education.
Yeah.
So they do have a funny, I thought, interaction about I just watched it and I forget the Bible story of the ones who confess that they're Christians and then get killed.
Oh.
And
I don't know.
the daughter, Anne, is like, well, they're stupid. Why did they do that?
Yeah. Why did they just lie?
And Grace is like, you'd lie? And she says, well, inside I would have believed in him, but I wouldn't have told the Romans that.
She's a smart cookie.
She's smart. And this is one of the main reasons, like, I am not a believer in a Christian God, because what a bitch. Like, you have to not only, like, just wholeheartedly believing in him isn't enough.
Yeah.
But you need to admit it and get killed if someone is going to ask you.
Yeah.
Like
you're
you have to die for this bitch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. All the bad, like when you read things about like toxic things to watch out for in relationships, Old Testament God does them all.
Oof. Oh, yeah.
He's the number one bad toxic boyfriend.
Yes.
But Grace says, well, if you did that, you would go to children's limbo, which is one of the 4 hells. And she says the other ones are hell and purgatory. And then the bosom of Abraham, which, like, I didn't know that was a hell.
I had not heard of that.
So it appears to be a place, according to Wikipedia, of comfort where the righteous dead abide prior to Jesus's resurrection.
Oh, so is that the heaven?
Like pre-heaven, maybe?
Pre-heaven? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Isn't that a thing where they don't go to heaven until the resurrection?
I'm not sure. Now I'm all confused.
I don't know. I was raised Catholic, and I think it's a little more straightforward than this. You just die, you go to heaven, you know.
Yeah.
You do 10 Hail Marys and you're good.
Yeah. Here you go. Not only that, you gotta wait. Like, where's this bitch? He's been dead over 2,000 years. How long is it gonna take?
TikTok, yeah, right?
Right? Because at the time, I think people thought like, oh, like this will be happening soon.
Any day now. Yep.
And like, like, if we all rise and go to heaven, like, what if you're cremated? You know, are you a cloud?
Right. Yeah.
If you're decomposed, are you just a skeleton? Like,
yeah.
You know, not a fun place to be. Too many.
I want to be a skeleton.
Actually, the skeleton would be kind of fun.
I would be I think it'd be kind of cool to be a skeleton.
I want to be a skeleton just so I can eat and like things go through me. And go,
yeah.
Yum.
yeah. I just want to do the thing where you have like your arm and you go whoop, and then you spin it around. I love that.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Maybe like conk someone on the head with your bone.
You could probably take it off, and whack somebody with it and put it back on.
Yeah, that'd be really fun.
I can't wait till we're skeletons.
It's gonna be so much fun.
but so after they have their little Christian lesson, they get in this fight, and Grace sends them to study in different dark rooms of the house. And she then hears one of them crying. So she runs to check on, I already forgot his name, Nicholas, with the brow. And he says, it wasn't me. So she goes to check on Anne, and Anne says, it's Victor. And Grace says, who's Victor? And Anne says that he's a little boy who says they need to leave the house. And he's been looking at this house with his family. And that's when Grace notices a door is open and light is coming in. So she berates the help, even though we know they didn't do it.
Yeah.
And so that night, Anne and Nicholas sleep in the same bed, and she says that Victor's in the room with them. And he hides under the covers and she goes, "You're a cowardly custard, cowardly custard, cowardly custard."
Cowardly custard.
I like that, cowardly custard.
I did really enjoy that.
And we do hear some like creepy footsteps.
Yeah.
There is some good creepy sound design in this that's not too jump scary. It's just eerie.
Yeah.
And we hear a voice, but it's always difficult at this point to tell if Anne is doing it or not.
Yeah, because it sounds very the kid from The Shining, very red, red, red.
Or the kid from Pet Sematary who is like 6 and they're trying to get to be evil.
Yeah. So it's very Stephen King sounding.
Yeah, you cannot make a small child seem scary.
No. Or I guess you can't make their voice sound scary because like you can get like a creepy angle on them, but as soon as they open their mouth, what's the again, Stephen King, Children of the Corn, they want you. Like that's, that ruined it.
Yeah, kids have just naturally cute voices. It's how they've evolved to us not killing them.
Yeah, they have Peppa Pig voices.
Yes. So Anne is punished once again because Nicholas starts screaming and she refuses to admit that she did this and she refuses to ask forgiveness for something that she didn't do. So I think Grace makes her read on the stairwell for a while and she's doing her needlepoint and she hears some thumping and some footsteps and she thinks it's Lydia, the mute girl, running back and forth, I guess. But she sees her outside. So she demands Anne to tell her the truth. And Anne has another good line. She says, "I told you there was someone in this house and you punished me. Now I don't know what to say."
Yeah. She's sticking up for herself.
This is kind of like the opposite of The Lodge, where it's like that one is like the kids are lying and ruining everything. But this one is the danger of not believing your children when they are telling the truth. You're just fucked either way.
Seriously, I know. Yeah. You really, you can't trust them and you can only trust them. So the only solution is to just not listen to them.
Right. And I wish this movie had delved a little more into the relationship because Nicholas is just a little baby mama's boy.
Yeah.
But Anne and Grace are really butting heads at this stage where I feel like Anne isn't quite old enough yet. Like feels like more something that would happen when they're teenagers and she's like, coming of age. So it's tough to understand why Grace is so hard on her.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense with what is revealed later that,
that's true.
Grace just kind of is maybe not in the best headspace.
That's a good point. Yeah. And maybe I just forget that because they don't even hint at that.
Yeah,
that's something that's like a twist within the twist that I almost forgot about. I couldn't quite remember how they got to the point they're at.
Yeah. I feel like even if you know the ending, you might not know that part. And it's, so maybe that has to kind of do with their relationship and kind of explains their relationship a little bit too,
That's true. And I imagine whoever's the older kid, even if like the genders were reversed, would have a similar thing. I think it's just maybe from her being older and not necessarily the girl. So I think the acting is really great in this part, especially from that girl. She's good. And she says that someone's in the junk room. So we get one of the first really suspenseful scenes in the movie. Yeah. And this movie does a really good job of making a bright room seem scary.
Yes. Yeah.
So Nicole has to go in and everything's covered with sheets. And she starts hearing voices. She hears someone say, "She's a woman. She's a what?" And then there's like a growling noise.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that was ever supposed to be, but.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is kind of one of those, like I mentioned before, I feel like iconic scenes Yeah, because it is so atmospheric, and just the, it's a lot of statues with the white cloth, so it gives that very
Mm-hmm.
ghostly appearance, and it's very tense. And at this point, you kind of, I think, start to wonder if Grace is like losing her mind or something.
Yep.
So it is, a good scene.
Yeah, it's a good scene. She freaks out, as you understandably would, and she
Mm-hmm.
starts stumbling around, and the sheets fall off of things. There's a creepy religious statue, and
Mm-hmm.
and a coat rack. Coat rack,
Ah,
jump scare.
the worst.
Um, and then Anne later tells her they're everywhere. They say this house is theirs, and they're going to take the curtains down as well.
Not the
And
curtains.
she draws this picture of the family. I remember this being in the trailer so many times because Grace says, "What do there's a like a mother, sorry, a mother, father,
Uh-huh.
a little boy, Victor, and then an old woman."
Mm.
And Grace says, "What are the numbers for?" And she goes, "That's how many times I've seen them." And the old woman, it says 14 next to her. And it's like, dun, dun, dun. That was in the trailer a lot. And for some
Yeah,
reason, very scary just because it was in the trailer. Even though
right.
now I'm like, what does it matter?
Right,
Why is
yeah,
she counting?
seriously. Why is she keeping track of that?
I know, it doesn't make any sense. So she goes, Victor says she's a witch. She keeps saying, come with me. So Grace gets a shotgun out and they're going to find these people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when Grace goes from like just being the mother to being like mother in the 2023 like gay sense of the word. Like she is mother. Like
Yeah.
Nicole came in this fitted dress with the
Yeah.
like 40s hair and the shotgun. Like mother is saving the day. They get some really good silhouettes of Nicole Kidman with the shotgun.
Yeah.
And so they hide the kids because they're going to open all the curtains and try to find the people who are hiding in this dark house. And Mrs. Mills is with the kids in like the dark kitchen or something. And Anne says about Grace, she says everything in books is rubbish, but she expects us to believe everything in the Bible.
Mm.
So I love this little skeptic.
Suspicious. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And while they're searching, they don't find any people, but Grace finds this Memento Mori book, this book of dead body photos. And I found this really interesting, especially since I think a lot of them are real.
Ooh.
There's a credit in the credits for post-mortem photography.
Interesting.
So I think they came from someone's collection.
Right. Yeah, because they are a real phenomenon that people used to do.
Yeah.
Wow.
What reminded me of Lady Macbeth, because they have her pose next to the dead father-in-law during that time.
Yeah.
And they're not really the Memento Mori photographs, but there are those Mrs. Peregrine's books for kids/teens. And they have creepy real photos in there that have been lightly doctored, but there's always something about a creepy old person, especially if they're dead, that is very eerie.
If anyone wants to take a picture with my skeleton, you're more than welcome to.
And so Grace she's like, all these people are sleeping. And it's like, ma'am, your homeschool education is doing you no favors.
Yes.
So Mrs. Mills has to say like, nope, sweetie, they're dead. And Grace says, how can they be so superstitious? Getting into some, maybe she's superstitious because of the Bible and everything. And Mrs. Mills very pointedly says, grief over the death of a loved one can cause people to do the strangest things. So that night, Nicholas asks when Daddy's coming back. We hear a little bit about Daddy. Daddy went away to war and has never come back. So we just Grace, they still wants him to come back, but we assume he's dead.
Yeah.
She breaks down crying, and then we hear someone playing the piano.
Ooh.
So Grace goes into the piano room and she locks the piano. And then she starts like, I don't know, she leaves and she's fiddling with the door for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why.
Yeah.
Other than because she has to be there for it to slam her in the face and knock her back.
Yeah.
And she runs in. Well, she's locked out. So she gets Mrs. Mills' keys and they go back into the music room and the piano's already been unlocked. So at this point, Mrs. Mills finally Flanagan's let her hair down. She has this very long braid.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about how sometimes the world of the dead mixes itself up with the world of the living.
Mm-hmm.
And Grace is like, that's not supposed to happen, till the end times, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So we get some, so Grace is going to go down to town. We've never seen anyone leave this house.
Yeah. It's all taking place here.
Been told that the help has come from town and they act like they've spoken to people in town. But Grace is going to go get Father McGraw and bring him to the house, even though she wrote to him weeks ago and he's never responded to her.
Mm-hmm.
So she also asks Mr. Tuttle, the gardener, to see if there's a cemetery on the ground. She had heard there was a cemetery. And we soon see Mr. Tuttle and Mrs. Mills like comically covering the cemetery up with piles of leaves.
Like very Scooby-Doo.
Yes, I know. They should really pull one of their faces off at the end of this. And they say that the fog won't let her get very far. So she goes wandering through the fog and she finds her husband.
Yeah. I
didn't remember this part at all.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I also thought the husband was played by oh my god, what is his name? Voldemort.
Ralph Fiennes.
Doesn't he look like Ralph Fiennes?
He looked like someone else to me. I'm trying to remember who he looked like to me at the time, and I was like, is that like Viggo Mortensen or something? Like I thought it was someone else, and it's funny because he obviously, he doesn't really play a huge role in it. So I was like, why did they shell out the big bucks? But no, I think it's just a random guy. It's just some guy, like most of the people in this movie.
Yep.
His name is Charles, and he surprises the children, but then takes to bed.
Yeah, he's depressed.
So at dinner, Grace and Anne fight again, and Anne starts to hyperventilate. So Mrs. Mills takes her into the kitchen, where she confesses to Anne that she sees the ghost too. And sooner or later, Grace is going to see them, and then things will be different. So now that Daddy's back, they're going to dress Anne up for her first communion. They put her in a white veil, and she says, I look like a bride. So this is where we get the other iconic scene from the trailer, where Grace goes into the room, and Anne now looks like an old woman behind the veil, but Anne's little voice is still coming out.
Yeah.
And
which
Grace
that's creepy.
Yes. It's very creepy.
Yeah.
And she says, what have you done to my daughter? Are you mad? I am your daughter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Grace attacks her, and Mrs. Mills shows up, and it looks like Grace is just physically assaulting her own child. And Anne is in hysterics. She says she won't stop until she kills us. And at this point, things are starting to come out. So Charles, the husband, pops up, and he says that Anne told him everything. We're assumed that Grace has hurt the kids before. And he says that he's going back to the front, even though the war is over. He just wanted to say goodbye to them. And he says all this while Nicole Kidman randomly takes off her clothes and lays on the bed in like a slip with her garter belts exposed.
Yeah.
This feels like something the Weinsteins made them add, honestly. Like in retrospect, it's like, we need a little more thigh in this PG-13 movie.
Yeah.
Because there's always got to be something gross in a Weinstein production.
True.
So in the morning, he's gone. We never see him again.
Nope.
And not only that, the curtains are gone.
Ah!
So the kids are screaming. Grace throws a cloak over them and drags them into this room where she blocks the window with one of their giant chalkboards. And it says, thank God for their growth in faith and love.
I didn't notice that. Yeah.
That was interesting. And so Grace tries to shake an answer out of Lydia, who I'm still not even sure why this character exists.
Seriously.
She's mute. She doesn't talk. She serves no plot purpose whatsoever.
No, just to have a third person. Yeah.
I know. And so Mrs. Mills says that the children could be cured after all, kind of sarcastically, but she doesn't seem to care that all the curtains are down.
Yeah.
So Grace gets her gun again and she kicks the servants out of the house and she says, we're going to go uncover the gravestones. Oh no, they say that. The help says, we better go uncover the gravestones.
Yes.
This kind of is the audience stupid overt like aside that we don't need to see at all.
Yeah.
And so at night, Anne sneaks out of the house and brings Nicholas with her. Are they leaving just to run away? What's the reason why they're leaving?
They're just running away. I think Anne says something about going into town.
Okay.
I can't remember if they mentioned something about looking for their father, but that would, check out.
That's the most logical. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they stumble upon these gravestones, and they're the gravestones for Mrs. Mills and for Lydia and Mr. Tuttle. We see they're all dead.
Yes.
And they start coming over the hill as we've discovered they're dead.
Which is also kind of a creepy scene.
It's a good creepy scene. They come out of the fog. It's dark. The boy is not listening. He says, you need to come to me. They're ghosts. Run away from them. And he's like, you've always told me that ghosts wear sheets and rattle chains. And this is where, like, again, if this were the lodge, like, I don't know, they would eat this kid alive because the other one lied to him and we'd feel something, but there's no sense of danger in this movie. That's another thing that put me off this time. There's no stakes.
That's very true.
So in the house, we cut away because in case it wasn't completely clear enough to you already, Grace has to find the memento mori photo of the servants just like randomly sticking out of a mattress.
Yeah.
And so just in case you weren't, in case you thought the graves were fake, we know that they're actually dead.
Yes.
And Mrs. Mills says that the living and the dead must learn to live together. They're like banging on the door kind of creepily.
Yeah.
And Anne and Grace, like Anne's going to send the kids away. Sorry, Grace is going to send the kids away to hide. And Anne gives her a hug. We've got to have some sort of closure, I guess.
Yeah.
You see Mommy with a shotgun defending you and
bridges all of those troubles.
Right. Even though it still doesn't resolve anything.
No.
But so the kids go hide in this closet, but then we get a blind lady jump scare when the cabinet door opens and the blind old woman peeks in.
Yep.
And so Grace is praying. She prays her way up the stairs for strength from God. And she walks in with basically a seance. And so we see the old woman. She is a medium who is trying to communicate with the kids, and she can hear the kids saying, "We're not dead. We're not dead."
Yeah.
And
she's really sad.
It is really sad. She's scribbling on a piece of paper, and there's like a guy who can read her scribbles and is translating for her. It's very Beetlejuice, but not funny. Like you've got basically you have Otho and like like the sticks around the table.
Right.
And, it's just like it's very Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
And again, in case it wasn't completely clear to you, when Grace comes in and starts tearing up the paper in front of them, we then have to cut to them at the table without Nicole Kidman and the paper tearing in midair. So we know they're actually dead.
Yeah.
So we learn that Grace smothered the children and shot herself after being distraught over her husband. And the homeowners also like Beetlejuice, the homeowners agree to leave.
Yeah.
Which is what the goal was. It's like Beetlejuice, but they won. The ghosts won.
Yes.
And so Grace confesses what she did to the kids. And she says, then the next morning she heard them laughing and she thought that the Lord was giving her another chance.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Mills rejoins them and says that there will be others. And sometimes we'll sense them, sometimes we won't. And we see Anne, this nice little shot of Anne dancing in the sunlight. So like it's almost kind of a happy ending for the kids.
Right. They say Mommy, it doesn't hurt anymore.
And then Victor sees like their ghostly shapes in the window.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we see a for sale sign and then it's over.
Spooky ooky.
Spooky ooky. Anything you wanted to add?
No, I think that covers it.
Excellent. So we will take a short break and we'll return with our Gothic roundup and we'll decide, is it Gothic? All right, ghosties, we're back with our Gothic roundup. All Gothic films have 4 elements: a girl, a guy, a house, and a haunt. I think this film is lacking in girl and guy.
Yeah, I mean, you could like maybe argue that like Anne is the girl and like Grace is the
Mm,
guy, because like it's kind of
very
Grace's
true.
fault, but
Mhm.
that would be a stretch, I think. um it's yeah, there's really not a clear cut girl and guy.
Yeah, because if you haven't listened before, Ghosties, the girl is generally the one who is drawn into a
Hmm.
world that she doesn't expect,
Hmm.
lured there by a guy. But for all Grace knows, well, one, her world doesn't change. Like, she doesn't know her world has changed. The
Yeah,
house is the same. It's the same house,
that's
the same
true.
kids, and there's no sense of danger, really.
No, yeah. And I mean, obviously, like we kind of alluded to, a big reason why it doesn't seem like there's a lot of danger is if you rewatch it, you sort of know what's gonna happen. So
Mhm.
it's not like they can die. Um
Right. Yeah, that really does take all the tension out of it.
yeah, yeah. And like you said, it's usually this like there's usually deception involved, or
Mhm.
if not deception, ulterior motives. And there really isn't any of that. I mean, it's really really tragic what happened, and Grace
Mhm.
obviously makes a terrible decision and choice and ruins her own life, but and ruins her kids' lives obviously. But yeah, it's missing that element. Not saying that it should have it. There should be, because like imagine the movie if like Grace knew the whole time and was like, haha,
Right.
like that
Right.
would be a lot worse. So
Right.
um, yeah, it doesn't really have that relationship.
So for me, I'm surprised that a movie, so the way I interpret the ending of this movie
Hmm.
isn't that they're in purgatory, but that like there is no afterlife and this is their
Mm,
afterlife. And that's the way I interpret it. And I feel like that is, in a way, this very shocking thing for a movie to basically just invalidate all of Catholicism and Christianity in its
right. Yeah.
ending. And so I don't know if that's an accurate interpretation, but that's how I've always seen it, because we're never really given anything otherwise, because it's not
Right.
like, you know, like you said, maybe the kids are there because they're not baptized. Maybe Grace is there because she killed them. But we don't know why the help is there. They died of
Yeah.
cholera or whatever. So
Right.
there's no, to me, evidence that this is any sort of purgatory. This is just
Right.
like and also like they're in the same house with
Hmm.
humans, can sometimes see them. Like, I feel like this is just like the case for there is no afterlife. And
Yeah.
therefore her
Yeah.
whole religion has betrayed her.
Right. Well, and like the whole aspect of, her husband, the father coming back too, he doesn't, a lot of times when a spirit kind of like goes away, it's portrayed in this very like, I'm going towards the light thing, but he's like, I'm going back to the battlefield. Like
No,
he
he
just
just
kind of,
wanted to go back to like his army bros.
yeah,
It's like, we're
yeah,
having a lot more fun out there.
he came back, he saw two, annoying little kids, his wife was going through it. He said,
Oh,
put me back in World War II.
I know, she's crazy. The kids just won't stop talking about Jesus. He's like, I
Yeah.
can't take this
Right.
anymore.
But actually, I just sort of like thought of this too when I said the World War II thing, is we actually don't know what war he fought in. I mean, I'm sure maybe some historical person could figure it out, but I always like the idea too of everything in the movie happening years before. Like, I mean, them living years before, and then
Oh, yeah.
something, causes them to wake up in the future-ish time.
Right.
Um, or maybe that this is like some kind of loop. I doubt that, but like that would be kind of an interesting take of they have to go through this every couple of decades just for the hell of it.
Yeah, and now this is not a movie that holds up to any sort of critical thought, but
No.
like if they're trapped, they also seem to be trapped in the house, like they can't
They
leave.
can't leave the
But like
grounds.
if he died fighting in the war, like they're on a fucking island. So
Yeah.
like did his ghost get on a boat and like go
Yeah.
to them? Like
Right. Did he
none of
just
that was even necessary. Like he didn't even need to come
teleport?
back.
I know.
There's
Yeah, that
no,
was
it doesn't serve any purpose for the
that was
story.
not a great plot line. I feel like they brought him back just to, I don't know, again, like maybe like a red herring, like
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It was very bizarre.
Very bizarre. So yeah, girl and guy, I think we're lacking. We
Yeah.
do have, I think, a great
Yes.
house
Yeah.
in this. And the house is a real house.
Mhm.
It is the Palacio de los Hornillos, which was built in Spain in 1840, but designed by a Scottish architect and is English neoclassical style and one of the few examples of Victorian architecture in Spain.
Interesting. It's a beautiful house.
It's so nice. They've got
Yeah.
this reflecting pool.
Yeah.
And I feel like even though most of the fog in the movie was computer generated, this place gets foggy.
I was gonna say is that I wish that fog was real. So hopefully it is out there.
It is. Yeah.
And I'm sure there isn't a real cemetery, but like it really fits the aesthetic. They should get one if they don't have one.
There probably is somewhere.
Yeah.
Unmarked graves where they just chucked the help or something. But
yeah. Maybe even just like a pet cemetery, I'd be fine with.
They come back too, man. They come back too. So some of the interiors were shot in other ridiculously fancy estates.
Oh.
One of them was at Oheka Castle, which is a registered trademark. And also as their tagline, Europe in America.
Oh.
Has the little R with the circle next to it.
Adorable.
This is in Long Island. And it emanates the elegant refinement of a chateau in France and a rich history that is distinctly American.
Ooh.
Never heard of it.
Interesting.
But they do trivia on Tuesdays in the bar. So
that's so much fun.
So I want to go. It's probably the only thing I can afford. And it's a $40 trivia night. But that's how you know everything's probably too expensive. But I can afford the $40 trivia night at Oheka Castle. So
and drink water.
Exactly. And then our haunt, we have ghosts. We back to the classic ghost story. I think, though, kind of what we've talked about before, when you invert the Gothic tropes too much, you end up just falling right out of being Gothic.
Right.
When you are the ghost, it's no longer Gothic.
Yeah, it's just kind of sad.
It's just sad.
Yeah. It's, it's a bummer.
This also does have that element lightly of like disability being horror, which crops up a lot in horror movies where you take some weird ass disability and that adds to the unsettling nature of the film.
That's true. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, I mean, their disability is being used as a plot point to, further the environment.
Yeah, and again, complete red herring because they're not even sick anymore.
Yeah, right. Also, that sucks that she had 2 kids with that disease. Seems like it's pretty rare.
It seems like it's very rare. Yeah. So really bad luck on all fronts for her.
Whoopsie.
But I also got a little bit of some Ari Aster out of this. Like, I wonder if this was inspirational or formative for him in some way. I forget how old he is. But I wonder if he was a fan of the others, because this movie feels like elevated horror before that was a thing.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And Midsommar got a lot of acclaim for being so bright and sunny, but also scary. And the way this movie makes the light seem scary.
That's true.
The mommy issues.
Yes. Always the mommy issues. But that's a pretty common thread in horror, I would say.
That's true. I might have just been reaching for something. I was trying to get something out of this movie. I really thought I was going to get more out of this movie, and I got less.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine.
It's fine.
I would not like immediately if someone came up to me and asked for a not too scary, like traditional horror, like I would suggest this. Like I think that
Yes.
this is, I think it makes sense that I watched it when I was just getting into horror. Like I think it is a good, it's not a movie you would like watch with your friends and have a lot of fun with, but like you could watch it with a couple of people if you want like a very chill night. You don't want to be too scared. Nicole Kidman is great. She's just a little breathy, little she's always breathing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not terrible, but you made a really good point about this being sort of like, an early elevated horror, because it has a big, well, not even a big budget, but it had a budget. It had, Nicole Kidman, it's British, feels very fancy.
Yeah, that kind of also inspired by M. Night Shyamalan. Everything had to have a twist.
Yeah.
Type of thing. It's a good like baby's first horror movie, like you said. It's training wheels for the horror genre.
It is.
So we do have some bonus gothics. We've got a Panano.
Yes.
I was wondering if candles should just at this point be a bonus gothic.
I think if it was, then every movie would have that. So it's almost moot in that point.
And then I was like, should mirrors be bonus gothic? We'll have to keep our eye out for mirrors.
Yeah, more mirrors.
Yeah. But what do you think? Is this gothic?
I would, if it feels wrong to say it's not gothic, like it feels wrong. Like it has a gothic vibe maybe, but the actual movie isn't gothic. So like maybe the light side of gothish.
Yeah, it's like barely gothish, I think. It has the gothic dressing.
Yes.
But it's not a gothic meal.
Yes. Yeah.
Not the gothic garnish.
Yes. Gothic garnish. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, gothic doesn't have to be horror. It doesn't have to be scary, but it has to have that like tense, dread, like competing kind of forces. I feel like gothic really has to have like the other thing too is I feel like this movie doesn't have a ton, and it's purposely done so it doesn't have a lot of resolution. Like of course it doesn't. Like that's kind of the whole point. And I think gothic movies, either they have a resolution or the characters work up to something, and doesn't really feel like we get that in this.
Yeah. The lack, like you said, the lack of tension, the lack of, for me, any sort of sense of danger, I think, is something that I didn't realize was so present in the gothic.
Yes.
And until it was not in this movie.
Yeah. Agreed.
Well, anything you want to add to our discussion on The Others?
I don't think so.
Well, thank you, Amanda. And thank you, Ghosties, for listening to us break down The Others. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And drop us an email at sogothicpod@gmail.com with comments and suggestions for future films. Until next time, stay ghosty. Boo-bye.
Bye.